The state of professional wrestling in 2026 as we gear in a little over halfway throughout the year is very interesting indeed. Seems to me that both top companies in the industry, WWE and AEW, are kind of getting by the skin of their teeth, just kind of riding into 2027 off the momentum of what they did the previous week. Not so much planning ahead, but planning for the immediate future. What is going to happen next week? Well, we'll get there, but what's going to happen in the future seems to be more important. If you look at the ticket sales for their two biggest events of the summer, AEW All In and WWE SummerSlam, they are less than stellar. AEW, albeit doing a lot better. Now they are a one-night pay-per-view, but there's about 30,000 tickets sold for their Wembley Stadium Spectacular, whereas SummerSlam, the two-night event in Minnesota, has just under 25,000 apiece. So, looking at the landscape and of what's the most important thing in professional wrestling to the business executives, which is revenue, then you look at what it's going to take to continuously generate revenue. Well, look no further than fan interest. Fans that are always watching, wayward fans, some fans from a long bygone, forgotten era. Those are the most important things to help generate revenue is overall interest. Now, are we getting a large surge of interest in both companies? I would say the hardcore fans, the wrestling fans that are never going to go anywhere, no matter what kind of slop you throw at us, those people are going to tune in no matter what. It's the ones that are trying to maybe rekindle something from a long time ago, a memory from back when they were young. They're probably not going to stick around if they don't feel like it's up to par. And if you're not getting a stringent, organized plan to produce long-term storytelling or even short-term storytelling that has a logical conclusion that can maybe set you up for the next feud after that storyline has completed, then you're setting yourself up for disaster. Now, why they do it makes a lot of sense to me, and I'll explain. Say you are building towards a world championship spectacular at one of your biggest events, and one of the challengers or even one of the champions gets injured. Well, then you're stuck in a scenario where you don't have a backup plan. You have no idea how you're going to get through with the rest of the card or even rebuild your main event. So you plan week to week, judge what roster you have available, who's 100%, who may require surgery, who's 60%, and then you shuffle the deck accordingly. And you always have sort of a backup plan in case of an emergency, a break glass in case of an emergency. If you are planning that way, then it could work really well, except for the part where there are no injuries or there is no reason to pivot. Now you have to scramble and come up with a way to make sense of that big spectacular main event that you had been planning and try to tie all the loose ends together before your go-home television show. That can be a little less than spectacular, and that can make your big spectacular main event look just like any old other main event from any other previous month's PLE or pay-per-view. So I decided to do this video on the state of professional wrestling because I feel like it's pretty important that we get all on the same page, no matter if you're a hardcore AEW fan and they can do no wrong, or you're a hardcore WWE fan and they can do no wrong. In your eyes, it's also good to take a step back out of the little bubble that you're in and look at everything in total, the macro, not necessarily the micro. In my opinion, WWE, if they don't figure some things out, could start to appear to look like World Championship Wrestling from when I was a kid. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to explain all of this, you guys, not dumping on either product, just stating a subjective opinion here. And by default, that would make AEW the WWF of that time period. Now, AEW is nowhere close to what WWF was doing, is and was doing during the Monday Night Wars, for better or worse. However, One thing that the WCW did back during the fabled war was lean on legacy acts to combat WWF's younger generation of main event talent. See, here we go. Now, while the WWF had guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Big Daddy Cool Diesel and Goldust and Razor Ramon and Jeff Jarrett and 1-2-3 Kid and all these guys that were coming up in the younger generation of the WWF at that time, pushing younger talent, mid to late 20s, early 30s talent that were ready to take the reins, the older legacy acts from the WWF jumped ship and went to WCW. Guys like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and Randy Savage and Roddy Piper and the Booty Man, right? So the younger talent in WCW was vast. I would argue that WCW had one of the better rosters of the 90s. They had talent from all over the world. The Fit Finleys, the Dean Malenkos, Rey Mysterio Jr., Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho. I know I'm not supposed to say Chris Benoit. Should I say Error 404? I don't know. Rey Mysterio Jr., Juventud Guerrera, Psychosis. I mean, the list goes on and on. William Regal. List goes on and on. Did they give them a chance to become top stars? Well, one could argue. Not in the way that they could have. The one big young star that they decided to push in WCW at that time, especially during the height of the Monday Night War, was Bill Goldberg. And he wasn't a professional wrestler. He was a former football elite that became a professional wrestler and just really lucked up into a situation where his position was pivotal. The crowds loved him. He was on a winning streak, and he was on a freight train towards the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. That sound familiar? All right, we'll get to that. So in AEW, they have a very young roster of main event talent. Guys like MJF, Will Ospreay, Swerve Strickland, Darby Allin, Kenny Omega, somewhat Jon Moxley. They anchor the main event roster for the company, while WWE has been clinging on to top guys who have been in the main event for over a decade. Guaranteed revenue, guaranteed to pack the house. You got guys like Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins. You got guys like Randy Orton that's in and out just a little bit. Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and, you can include Cody Rhodes and CM Punk here, although they're fresh off their returns to the company. They've been synonymous with the WWE for just as long. Who else do you have that's ready for the main event that's really young? Obafemi. The crowd chants for him. He's young. He has a sports background outside of professional wrestling. He's newly trained as a professional wrestler. He's a big powerhouse guy. He's got the look, the charisma, the ability to draw an audience. They're attracted to this wrestler. And he's one of the only young guys that's pretty much been given the ball to run to become a big-time superstar in the WWE. Now, one could argue, you got wrestlers like Braun Breaker, Jacob Fatu, Gunther. They have shown the capability to be the top guys for the company, but they have yet to be fully given the ball, or the brass ring, if you will, to run with, which leaves WWE without a set vision for their future. The one difference between the WCW, WWF back then versus AEW and WWE right now is that AEW, respectfully, is nowhere close to banging down the door of the top wrestling company in the world. Both companies are also being affected by declining ticket sales. Meltzer blames the UK economy on the slower ticket sales for AEW All In, while and the newly formed My AEW app for lack of ticket sales for Wembley, because why would they go to the arena when they can watch the pay-per-view at a lower price through the app, right? While all signs point to a lack of proper storyline development for WWE as they gear up for another two-night spectacular in SummerSlam. It seems that both companies have relied on their core audiences tuning in and night out, no matter what they do creatively, to get them by. And it's usually done on a week-to-week basis, as I stated before. Both companies have also made attempts at bringing in newer, younger fans into the product by outsourcing to social media influencers to do live streams or cross-promotional angles to garner further attention. WWE has used KSI, Kai Cenat, IShowSpeed, Lil Yachty, and even Logan Paul in small to prominent roles, while AEW recently had a Twitch simulcast with influencer Agent 00. However, the underlying ingredient missing from both companies is consistent episodic TV that leaves you excited to tune in next week to see what unfolds. It's more than top guy wrestling in main event matches, pull apart brawls, or promo battles that blur lines of reality. It's the cliffhangers, the abrupt endings before we get conclusions, the angles that lead you outside of the arena into their homes, into a bar, into a bridge, into the streets. The shock of something that's unexpected that we can't wait to see how they explain it next week. Not just at the top of the card either. From the opener to the main event, each storyline has a proper setup and story beat that gets us interested in where it goes from here. Now, furthermore, newer talent entering the company needs to be introduced to the audience in a way that gets us to care about them and be invested in their development and eventual rise to the top of either company. These are glaring omissions from both companies that I've noticed that leaves holes that are beginning to widen. Both AEW and the WWE have shot holes in their boats and are taking in water instead of patching holes and dumping water. More often than not, it is as if they are shooting bigger holes and leaving the ship in a worse chance of drowning than before. AEW and WWE are both generating revenue and attendance at record-breaking pace here at this point. Although with low interest that is stagnant, and it doesn't appear as though there is a drastic concern to change the direction or risk loss at this point. However, if these issues aren't addressed quickly, it will cause a tidal wave that will be difficult to surface and survive. If WWE keeps leaning on celebrities and veterans, then they'll have a harder time pivoting to the younger talent for fear of not selling as many tickets and losing interest. They won't look at creative either. They'll look at the younger wrestlers moving up the card and deem that they are simply not ready, which will leave them into a hole because they will lean on to bringing older stars and they will only get older, and the younger talent will be left twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out what it is that they need to do to get the WWE to feel fully confident and invested in what they're going to do. Meanwhile, on the AEW side of the game, their roster is so big and it gets bigger and bigger that they don't have time to fully get us interested in every single performer that is being rotated on Dynamite week in and week out. They do have Collision, but Collision has lost interest and it is not the same type of B show. It is more often than not looked at as a C show than a B show now. And it's harder for fans to get invested in what they are going to do on that program. So Dynamite is the full-fledged program where you get to see these performers and you want to become emotionally invested. Just this past Wednesday, we saw Commander show up. We hadn't seen him in a while. Where was he? Where is the footage of him working in the CMLL promotion, for instance? Hangman Adam Page made a surprise and shocking return to Collision. Where was the follow-up on Dynamite that he showed up on Saturday's Collision, and maybe where he's going to go from there on out? We never got that. We just got matches and storyline buildups as they attempt to try to rectify the Redemption pay-per-view card that they failed to promote adequately because they were too busy setting up for AEW All In, which is the pay-per-view that follows Redemption. Furthermore, AEW also had a spectacular Beach Break event that looked like a free pay-per-view with the amount of matches that they had. Chris Jericho and Tommaso Ciampa, Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher, MJF and Kenny Omega for the AEW World title that led us to a huge title change in that event as well. It was basically Redemption for free. So while we got a pay-per-view caliber Dynamite card, if you look at the lineup for AEW Redemption, which is Tekla against Willow Nightingale, it is Kenny Omega against Kevin Knight for the AEW World Championship, Kyle Fletcher against Bandito for the AEW International Championship, Mark Davis against Andrade El Idolo, the Painmaker Chris Jericho in a rematch against Tommaso Ciampa, and Cope and Cage against Claudio Castagnoli and Pac. That looks more like a Dynamite level type of event on pay-per-view. So you got to wonder, interest is not as high for that pay-per-view as it possibly could have been, but they were trying to get things building and get things rolling for All In so they can get more ticket sales so the event can really get the attendance that they're hoping to get for Wembley, which may be their last Wembley event for a while. So you see where the problem lies. It's just in the organization. It's in the proper planning. Things work better with a playbook. And Tony Tone Khan knows more about preparation and planning because he often works for football and American football in ways where you have a playbook. You do your research and you plan ahead. And with a proper plan, you usually come out successful. Of course, things are going to happen that are out of the hand, so you do want to plan for that and have a rotation based off of what could potentially happen. So if you're on a chalkboard and you have like, oh, I want Kyle Fletcher against Bandito, and then suddenly Bandito has passport problems, visa issues, whatever that may be. So I've got Kyle Fletcher against Bandito for redemption, or I've got Kyle Fletcher and Kazuchika Okada against Konosuke Takeshita and someone else. And that's the plan that I'll have in case Bandito is not going to be able to make the pay-per-view. You want to plan ahead, but you don't want to plan on the fly. And what I'm noticing for WWE and AEW is that it's too much on-the-fly planning, which leaves lack of interest because you're looking at things and you're, instead of looking at it and enjoying it for what it is, the common wrestling fan nowadays, with the overabundance of information being given to them through social media, is looking to poke holes in every single storyline that is generated on their television programs and pay-per-views. So if they're looking to poke those holes and they find them glaring because there has been lack of planning and most of the stuff is planned the day of the event or the show, then it just leaves people wondering why they're even tuning in. I know that can be harsh. As a wrestling old head, me, reporting from the portal of pro wrestling as I normally do, I'm going to watch professional wrestling no matter what. I have lived through some dark times in professional wrestling, some dark eras. I lived through a time where it was only WWE that was around and TNA was striving, and they were worse off than AEW is currently as the number 2 promotion, and by default they were. TNA I would cheer for, and I would hope that they would finally get it in gear. You know what TNA did? They had a roster, a very good roster. Frankie Kazarian, Christopher Daniels, Jerry Lynn, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Low-Key, Homicide. Just a roster of Robert Roode, Bobby Roode, James Storm. They had a roster of great, young, talented wrestlers from all over the world. Probably one of the greatest wrestling rosters of young talent at that time. What they decided to do was lean on legacy acts. WWE let guys like Booker T and Jeff Hardy and Bully Ray and Hulk Hogan and Sting and Kurt Angle and Scott Steiner all slip through their fingers. And TNA swooped them up and gave them prominent position on their television program instead of helping those younger guys get over by working with some of that older talent. We ended up with world title reigns from pretty much all of those legacy acts and not as much emotional development and character development in guys like AJ Styles, who could have carried TNA into the future. Look at what AJ Styles became when he went to New Japan, when he went to Ring of Honor, and then he inevitably made his debut in WWE. At the height of his game, he was generating so much interest. He was a top performer. Now remember, TNA also had an opportunity to get CM Punk, and CM Punk was a part of TNA for a while, but they never retained him. They had Kazuchika Okada as well at one point, and they gave him some Kato gimmick from Green Lantern. It's wild. So, the point being, if WWE is really concerned about the bottom line, the generating of revenue, then you have to give us a reason to care and tune in. It can't always be about celebrity guests. It can't always be about, oh, this is the return of the final boss, Bloodline Rules, or Brock Lesnar. It has to be about making sure that their future is intact by giving the reins to some of the younger talent, mixing them with the legacy acts, and seeing what they're capable of. Because you won't know until you know. And then they always have a chance to pivot. So that's my thought on the state of professional wrestling in 2026. I am the eternal optimist. I believe that by 2027, things are going to start working in a way where everybody is going to be talking about professional wrestling again. The last boom period that we had after WrestleMania 40 is already pretty much over. And in the 90s, the boom periods lasted a little bit longer, We didn't have as much access to information as we do now, so things are going to be moving at a rapid pace. The boom periods aren't going to last as long, and hopefully the downturns aren't going to last as long either. That's my opinion, but guys, I would love to know what you think about the state of professional wrestling in 2026 and beyond, and if you agree or disagree with what I had to say about the current professional wrestling product in terms of AEW and WWE. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you so much for watching. And guys, if you're interested, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because you never know when I'll be dropping out of the portal of pro wrestling and report on the current wrestling product. Guys, it's the Wrestling Old Head. I'll see you in the next one.